In a secluded beach house, Cecilia awakens from her sleep. Careful not to disturb her boyfriend, Adrian, she rises from the bed and reaches beneath it, retrieving a hidden stash of diazepam. However, just as she prepares to depart from the bedroom, a sudden movement from Adrian startles her. Undeterred by the unexpected fright, Cecilia moves towards the dressing room. She retrieves a duffel bag filled with clothes and conceals the medicine within. As an added measure, she redirects the gaze of the hallway camera towards the clueless boyfriend, ensuring she can maintain a watchful eye over him. Then she proceeds to the laboratory, disabling the house cameras. She also keeps an eye on her sleeping boyfriend lest he wakes up. Swiftly and silently, she gets dressed and leaves the garage to escape during the night. Suddenly, her pet dog Zeus appears. Relieved, she removes the electric collar from Zeus. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, the dog accidentally activates the car alarm, sending Cecilia into a frantic state. Urgently, she rushes towards the protective embrace of the fence, while the bedroom light flickers on. Dashing through the forest, she reaches a desolate road. Anxious and trembling, she waits for her sister Emily to come to her rescue. A wave of relief washes over her as her sister's vehicle finally arrives. Cecilia quickly jumps into the car, but just as they are about to speed away, Adrian attacks her through the car. However, the two sisters manage to escape. As they leave, Adrian stumbles upon the bottle of diazepam on the ground, fueling his determination to find them and exact his revenge. 2 weeks later, Cecilia is seeking refuge at her friend James's house. She remains gripped by fear, reluctant to go outside. Further, she also takes other precautionary measures and covers her computer camera. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, jolting Cecilia from her guarded state. It is Emily who has come to visit her. A wave of panic courses through her as she immediately suspects that Adrian might have tracked her down. However, to Cecilia's surprise, her sister bears unexpected news. Adrian has killed himself. In a state of emotional turmoil, Cecilia confides in James and Emily, recounting the harrowing experiences she endured under her husband's control. It wasn't merely physical violence that marked his abuse, but an insane amount of control over her, from her appearance to her thoughts and speech. The next day arrives and Cecilia steps out of the house with newfound ease. James also gives her a letter addressed to her. Later on, Cecilia and Emily find themselves inside a law office. They listen as Adrian's brother, also a lawyer, reads out the final wishes of the departed. The deceased, in a surprising turn of events, has bequeathed the sum of $5 million to Cecilia. However, this gift comes with a crucial condition. Cecilia must never be implicated in any criminal charges or be deemed mentally unstable. Back home, filled with gratitude, Cecilia decides to express her appreciation to Sydney and James. James receives a massive ladder, symbolizing the support he has provided, while Sydney is granted a bank account with funds, enabling her dream of attending fashion school. Despite the celebration, a lingering unease grips her. The sensation that someone is watching her persists. The following day, James, ready for work, asks Cecilia to wake Sydney up. Cecilia heads towards Sydney's room, but in her haste, she leaves the stove burning. Breakfast turns into chaos as the food catches fire in a mysterious way, but thankfully, Sydney saves the day. Later that day, Cecilia's intuition gets the best of her, making her search every nook and corner of the house as she still thinks she's being watched. The silence is shattered when the front door creaks open, causing Cecilia to panic a little. She cautiously approaches the entrance, only to find emptiness. Night falls and we find Cecilia and Sydney sharing a bed. Abruptly, a mysterious force tugs at their covers, causing Cecilia to wake up. Her drowsy eyes dart around the room, catching a fleeting glimpse of a figure. Relief washes over her as she realizes it is merely Sydney's mannequin. Cecilia finds the cover and reaches down to retrieve it from the floor. Yet a chilling realization grips her. Someone seems to occupy the vacant chair nearby. Reacting instinctively, she hurls the cover towards it, only to find an empty space. She tugs at the cover, but they remain steadfast, as if someone's standing on it. Fearing the unknown, Cecilia lets out a terrified scream as James rushes into the room. James, seeking to console his friend, offers reassurance, urging her not to let the haunting memory of Adrian consume her. The next day, Cecilia goes to a job interview. Although everything seems to go fine, the real trouble arises when the interviewer requests to see her portfolio. When Cecilia reaches into her bag, she finds it empty. Her work is nowhere to be found. Overwhelmed by the situation, Cecilia's emotions intensify, ultimately causing her to faint. James rushes her to the hospital. Later on, Cecilia, while in the shower, hears the phone ring. Hastily grabbing the receiver, she is met with the voice of her doctor on the other end. The doctor reveals the reason behind her fainting spell: alarmingly high levels of diazepam in her system. As Cecilia's mind races to comprehend this shocking revelation, her gaze lands upon a bottle of diazepam resting on the bathroom sink. What's more chilling is that it's the same bottle that she had used to drug Adrian. Later, Cecilia takes James with her as they visit Adrian's brother. She reveals the existence of a bottle of diazepam, claiming that Adrian planted it. However, her words fall on deaf ears as the brother dismisses her allegations. Cecilia asserts that Adrian is not dead in reality and has somehow mastered the art of invisibility invisibility as he is a genius in optics. She is convinced that his brother is aware of this secret. However, Adrian's brother presents Cecilia with a photograph of Adrian's lifeless body, confessing that he felt a sense of relief when his brother met his demise. With no options, Cecilia pays a visit to Emily. Emily reveals that she has received a cruel email written by Cecilia expressing her true feelings towards her. Cecilia denies being the sender, pointing the blame squarely at Adrian, yet Emily remains skeptical and insists that Cecilia seek help. Back at home, she examines her email's sent items folder and to her dismay, discovers the email. Sydney enters the room and finds Cecilia sobbing on the floor. Moved by empathy, Sydney offers words of comfort and support. Determined to lift Cecilia's spirits, she suggests girls' night. As Sydney rises from the floor, an unexpected object strikes her. A surge of fear grips her, and she immediately calls out for her father, suspecting that Cecilia may have been responsible for the peculiar incident. With frustration mounting, they leave Cecilia alone in their house. Now, left alone, she calls out Adrian's name, hoping to get some answers. In a spontaneous act, she seizes a bag of coffee and scatters its contents across the floor, positioning herself at the opposite end of the room from the door. Suddenly, she gets the idea to dial Adrian's phone number. As the phone begins to ring, a faint sound reverberates from above, the attic. Celia furiously ascends into the attic and dials Adrian's phone once more. Following the faint echoes, she navigates through the passage, stumbling upon Adrian's keys, a knife, and her portfolio. Suddenly, a noise startles her from behind. Swiftly, she seizes a paint can and hurls it towards the opening in the attic, unveiling the silhouette of a man. She follows the man into the kitchen. To her astonishment, the sink is brimming with paint. Suddenly, an invisible force seizes hold of her, lifting her off the ground. Her body is tossed around the house like a rag doll as she engages in a desperate struggle. Determined to escape her spectral assailant, she manages to evade its clutches and flees in a frenzy. She darts out of the house and calls for a cab, violently urging him to go to the location of Adrian's beach house. Once they reach their destination, she asks him to wait while she collects something from the house. Cecilia marches into the laboratory with Zeus on her heels. She finds a foreign gadget. A tablet fixed to the wall provides clues, making it easy for Cecilia to successfully deactivate the device. Slowly, the gadget unveils an astonishing item, an invisibility suit. Eager to examine this garment, Cecilia begins to remove it from a mannequin. The dog suddenly barks, alerting her of another presence in the house. This prompts her to hide in Adrian's closet with the invisible man is ready to attack her again. Thankfully, the man fails to notice her. Seizing the opportunity, she swiftly slips away, aided by the continued barks of the faithful Zeus. Cecilia jumps into an awaiting cab and reaches for her phone to call Emily, urgently requesting a meeting later that night. When Emily finally arrives, Cecilia wastes no time in divulging the shocking discoveries she made in Adrian's house, evidence that he might still be alive. Abruptly, a knife materializes midair and attacks Emily, swiftly slitting her throat. Before Cecilia can register the event, the knife inexplicably finds its way into her trembling hand. Amidst the chaos, Cecilia finds herself pinned down and apprehended by authorities. Struggling against their hold, she vehemently protests her innocence, insisting that she is not responsible for the crime. She is confined in an asylum. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps slices through the silence, and a voice whispers the chilling word, "Surprise." Meanwhile, James, together with his colleague, interrogates Cecilia. Desperate to convince them of Adrian's guilt, she hints at possessing concrete evidence, but refuses to divulge the details as she's convinced that Adrian is listening to them. The horror doesn't end here. Cecilia discovers from one of the nurses that she's pregnant. In the following day's visitation, Adrian's brother appears at the asylum. In a condescending tone, he informs her that due to the criminal charges she faces and her mental incompetence, she stands to lose any claim to Adrian's vast wealth. He presents her with two choices. She can either relinquish her claim to the money by signing it, or she can embrace motherhood and return to the clutches of Adrian. Without hesitation, she rejects his proposition, seizing an opportunity to steal a pen from his possession. Later that night, as the orderly completes a thorough check of Cecilia's room and departs, she quietly slips into the shower. With a pen clenched tightly in her hand, she presses the tip against her skin, ready to kill herself. In a shocking twist, the invisible man materializes out of thin air and seizes Cecilia's hand. In a desperate act of self-defense, she repeatedly stabs him with the pen. Just as the security guard enters the room, his gaze falls upon the damaged suit. He aims his gun at the invisible man, but to his surprise, the assailant turns the tables and attacks the guard instead. Cecilia tries to flee, but her escape is swiftly thwarted by two guards. As they escort her back to her room, the relentless invisible man resurfaces, mercilessly eliminating each guard in his path. Having dispatched the last guard on that floor, the invisible man discards his weapon. Seizing the opportunity, Cecilia snatches up the abandoned firearm and gives chase. Their pursuit leads them outside, rain pouring down upon them. With a gun in hand, Cecilia searches for the invisible man. van. Sensing movement nearby, she follows the sound, unaware that security guards are closing in on her as well. Suddenly, he springs from his concealed position and grips her tightly, his hands wrapped around her throat. In a chilling warning, he threatens to harm her loved ones, specifically mentioning Sydney. Fueled by her determination, Cecilia fights back, refusing to succumb to his control. Cecilia finds herself pursued by the invisible man in a speeding car. Desperate to defend herself, she opens fire, causing a collision with another vehicle. Seizing the opportunity, she commandeers the crashed car and resumes her journey. She dials James's number, urgently instructing him to return home to protect Sydney. Meanwhile, the invisible man arrives at the house and enters her room. Sensing a presence, she awakens and retrieves pepper spray from her bag. Armed with her makeshift defense, she sprays him as he approaches, causing him to stumble and fall. In a state of panic, she flees, but the invisible man grabs hold of her. In a twist of fate, James arrives just in time, diverting the man's wrath towards himself. Helpless and terrified, Sydney pleads for the assault to stop. Thankfully, Cecilia emerges at the right time, wielding a fire extinguisher. With a decisive blow, she attacks the invisible man and then delivers a fatal gunshot. As the lifeless body lies before her, she removes the mask, only to discover that it was not Adrian, but his brother. Concurrently, a tactical police unit investigates Adrian's house, revealing the shocking sight of Adrian, imprisoned in the basement. Later, the scene shifts to James, who recounts the discovery to Cecilia. However, Cecilia remains skeptical, unwilling to accept that Adrian could be just an innocent victim in this mess. As the night unfolds, Cecilia musters the courage to return to the foreboding house. Adrian is eagerly awaiting her arrival, a twisted grin on his face. Adrian, attempting vulnerability, extends an apology, acknowledging the lessons he claims to have learned. However, Cecilia demands a confession, an admission of guilt for all the unspeakable acts he committed. Stubbornly, Adrian persists in swearing that his brother, not he, held the reins of control, painting himself as a mere puppet in a sinister game. James is seen lingering outside, listening to their conversation. The moment Adrian utters the word surprise, Cecilia excuses herself to go to the bathroom, while Adrian awaits her return. In a sudden and tragic turn of events, the security camera records a horrifying scene. Adrian's hand abruptly grips a knife and immediately slices through his throat. Just as the weight of the situation begins to sink in, Cecilia re-emerges. Distraught, she immediately dials 911 and waits. However, away from the security camera, she sits with a sinister expression as she watches Adrian slowly lose his life. Amid this harrowing scene, James shows up at the house. His eyes catch sight of a bag in Cecilia's possession containing the invisibility suit. Filled with a mix of confusion and concern, he cautiously wonders if her intentions were premeditated all along. Yet instead of providing a straightforward answer, she chooses to evade the question, leaving James to contemplate the incident. Triumphantly, she leaves,